This is the ASMR Metal Man doing some ASMR that might be, but it's lo-fi without my Blue Yeti microphone because I can't find the thing to hook it up to. I need to get a new one, I guess. And will probably be ruined by my dog's vocalness, so if you're listening to this to fall asleep, you might want to pick another video. So I thought I'd give an update on what I've been up to with training my dog, what I've been doing. So I got hooked up with a new so-called balance trainer. For the first time, I actually found a trainer where I agree practically and ethically with how they train dogs. Because I found the dog trainers I work with were for the most part either so ineffective it was, not a good investment of my money or time, or they was so heavy-handed that I just didn't feel comfortable continuing to work with them. So I finally got hooked up with a dog trainer in Kentucky that goes by the name of Larry Crone. And I've made some significant progress. So Larry Crone is, in the dog training world, is most famous for, is a very famous dog trainer, and he's also pretty well known for selling this book, Everything You Need to Know About E-Collar, also known as Shock Collar Training. And I myself have invested in a e-collar / shock collar, a high quality one called the Mini Educator. And I know a lot of people for the 5 people that will watch this will just be like, oh my god, why would you want to shock your dog? It's so horrible, blah, 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 blah. What they don't understand, see, these people view the e-collar / shock collar as a giant hammer, basically, to crush unwanted behaviors. And while it certainly can be used for that, it can be used as a positive punisher. I personally choose not to use it that way for me. Just because I feel like if I was to try to do that, I would screw up my dog. What I instead use it as is something called a negative reinforcer to reinforce my dog's recall while we're out in the woods. And it's like, well, you don't need a shock collar to reinforce a recall. You can use positive reinforcement. And you certainly can. And before I started with the e-collar / shock collar, I've worked a recall every day for like 2 months, and I just got, even in my backyard on a long line, I just got nowhere because this dog was, even when I had food in my hand or not, because the competing motivators, even in my backyard, were so much more enticing to her that she would just pretty much flip me the bird and blow me off. And these people will talk about, well, that's a relationship problem, blah, blah, blah. What I find interesting is these people who talk about focusing on building the relationship, if you were to tell them, well, if your relationship with your dog is so good, why don't you let the dog off leash in public around competing motivators, like other things in the environment, other dogs, people, and see how they behave? If your relationship is so good, why don't you let them off leash and they'll just stay with you? And of course, pretty much every single time that I'm aware of, they tuck their tail between their legs and run. Now, of course, this is not to say that relationship is not important. It's very important, but it's not the be-all, end-all for dog training. And just on a side note, in order to bolster my relationship with my dog, I've been doing a lot of work on play. Like, it's not necessarily structured play, just getting my dog to tug, because that helps with your dog, with the bond between the dogs significantly. And establishing that play relationship, like I'm already noticing a big difference in her behavior. She just seems much more in tune with me. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about what I did to condition the shock collar so I wouldn't destroy my dog. So I obviously used this book. I wouldn't have bought it if I wouldn't have used it. I started off on a shitty quality one that I got off Amazon for like 60 or 70 bucks. And Larry, my trainer, when I was on the phone with him, he's like, that's no good. You need a mini educator or a Dogtra. So I invested in a mini educator. That's just Larsa playing with her treat ball. There's a new machine. And hello, Larsa. Hello, there's a new machine. She's just off camera in there. And so I invested in a mini educator and I got it. And before, with the shitty quality e-collar, I had already started conditioning the aversive using the dog's lowest working level. So what do I mean by that? Lowest working level is the lowest level that the dog perceives it. And that's why I don't necessarily agree with people when they just say, oh, it's just a shock collar. They call it an e-collar because they want to hide from the fact that it's a shock collar. When you're working with the dog's lowest perceived level, it's not a shock. It's a tingle / tickle. You barely and for her working level, her lowest perceived level is 3. So we started there. And basically what I did, I can't remember what the lowest working level was on the shitty one, but I found it. So she already knows her recall. And this is a common misconception that people have with shock collars and e-collars / e-collars. They say that people use them to teach behavior because they think it's a negative reinforcer. No. Well, I mean, you can, but if you do that, you're an idiot at worst. An asshole at best. No, what most people use it for is they use it to negatively reinforce what the dog already knows. So negative reinforcement is the taking away of something that the dog doesn't like, that the dog finds aversive, in order to, in this case, reinforce / encourage a behavior. And these same people will talk about people who use shock collars teach behavior with punishment. That's actually scientifically impossible because punishment by its very nature is meant to deter a behavior. So those people pretty much are full of it and have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. So anyway, what I did when I got her on her lowest working level is I'd hit the shock, or at that level more like stem, doot, on the long line. Then I'd call. Then I'd give Larsa her recall. And she'd come to me. And then I'd use either a marker word or my clicker. So then I'd mark and reward. And every time on the long line she would come back to me, I would just do that over and over and over again. Hit the stem, call, mark, reward. And I did that for about a week. And then after that, I took her off the long line. And I started hit the stem, call, mark, reward. Did that for another week or two. And the reason, boom. And it's like, well, why would you hit the stem before you recall the dog? Like, what's the point in that? It doesn't seem fair. The thing is that if you just use it when the dog, Larsa was already responding really well to the e-collar in terms of her recall. So if I was to just do it after the command, it would have been as she was coming towards me. So the problem with that is if you hit the stem when the dog is coming towards you, you're poisoning the command, you're poisoning the obedience. So the dog associates the command with the stem, which creates a negative association with the command. If your dog is coming to you and you're hitting the stem, as you're hitting the stem, you're teaching the dog that even though I'm coming, the annoying thing isn't going away. So what you need to do is hit the stem first, because the dog associates the command as the solution to the problem rather than a beginning of the problem. So that's why I did it before the command. So after a week or two of that, I then started mixing things up a bit. I would hit the stem, recall, mark, reward, and then and this is another important thing. So in order to use the shock collar for recall, what you have to do is your dog needs to know at least two commands. One, the recall command. Two, the break command. So the recall command is self-explanatory. You call the dog comes to you. So, the reason why you need a break command is the very point of using a shock collar, at least for me, is I want my dog to be able to run around off leash like a maniac. And there's this farm that I go to 3 to 4 times a week that my mom's friend zone that lets me use it. There's no livestock or anything, and I let her run wild, and that's the very point. So when I give the break command basically means do whatever you want. Go crazy, sniff, etc. So if I was to only teach a recall command, and then with no break command, the dog wouldn't know, hey, I want you to run around. Okay. So that's why it was important before all this for me to have a good break command. So I have both. So anyway, what I do is, I'd hit the stem, call the dog off leash in my backyard, then she'd come, then I'd mark and reward, then I'd give her the break command for 3 minutes. And then I would hit the stem, call the dog, and then when the dog came to me, I would actually not reward the dog. And then I give her the break command, and then I would call her with no stem, mark reward after that 3-minute break. And then after that 3-minute break, I would call the dog, with no stem, and then not reward. This is how you phase out the reward in both the e-collar. So after about a week doing this in my backyard, I went over to the farm, because this is what I've been planning for, and I let Lursa off leash, and it was the greatest thing ever. I'm like, I unhooked the leash, because usually we go to the farm and I just walk her on the leash because I can't trust her off the leash because the competing motivators are too much, and I let her off, and she's like a Ferrari. It's quite amazing to see your dog that's been stuck on a 6-pet tether for the better part of a year. It's quite amazing being able to see them go off leash and run around. It's quite fantastic. And what I would do is I'd let her run around for about 3 minutes, and then I'd hit the stem at about 10 or 15, because a dog's working level in your backyard is different when they're around all like competing motivators. So I would call her. Sometimes I could get as low as 8. Anyway, So I'd hit the stim, call her, mark reward with insert treat here, kibble, etc. And then I do this, and then I repeat the same process. Give her a 3-minute break command where she's just running around. Then I call, hit the stim, call her, no reward, give her a break for 3 minutes, and then no stim, call, mark reward, and then no stim, call, no reward. And then I'd also flip around the combination. Sometimes I'd start with the no stim recall with no reward, and then I'd switch it around which one I would do. So sometimes after that, I would then follow up with hitting the stim, calling, then rewarding. I'm flipping it around so the dog keeps the dog on its toes. It's just, it's been so difficult for me meeting my dog's needs. When you have a dog that's this intelligent, this driven to do something, has this much gusto, and the dog's stuck on a 6-foot tether and is so frustrated because they don't get to be a dog. It's really sad. It's a sad thing to have your dog go through. So this has really changed my dog's life. This is the greatest thing ever, watching her zip up and down that trail like a Ferrari, just. So, anyway, the very point of using both rewards, both negative reinforcers and positive reinforcer, negative reinforcer and a positive reinforcer would be like food or a toy, is to fade them out. So, yeah, I'd go to the farm 2, 3, 4 times a week, and I keep doing this. But then I started to fade out the reward. Okay? So I basically would reward her less often. So instead of 2 times per cycle, it would be sometimes 1 time per cycle. And then sometimes it would be, I basically got to the point with the fading out of the reward where I would only reward her for about 5 times per walk, and then I faded it out to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So in order to make sure that my dog actually knew what she, actually knew what the e-collar meant, one day, the e-collar was on 13, and I hit the stim, and I said nothing. She turns around. She runs towards me, and obviously, once she turns around, you got to get the timing with these things right. She turns around, runs over to me, and of course, as soon as she does that, I remove the stim,